let's talk a little bit about like how society and our laws determine what is just and unjust. And as I mentioned earlier, we sort of decided as a society what is, well, just and unjust, what we think people should be able to do and what they think and what we think people should not be able to do. Okay, and it's typically based on like morals and ethics, and there's a whole philosophy section on that. There's a lot of studies dedicated just to morals and ethics, and pretty much every profession you do, there's certainly some learning based around morals and ethics. But generally, you can also see that as grounded in science. Okay, and I'll explain that a little bit here in a second. But also personal freedom. I mean, personal freedom is a huge factor in terms of how our laws and society define what is just and unjust. Meaning something might be unjust, but because it's fundamentally a human right, we can't actually take it away. And an example of that is free speech. Like, is it unjust or unfair for someone to say racial slurs? Well, yes, of course. But what's even worse is taking away freedom of speech. And so freedom of speech it's a personal freedom that every human should have. And so even though it's unjust, we don't make it illegal. Even though, I mean, and it is, of course, it is discrimination, that particular example. But to get back on the science thing, and I mentioned that, like, it should be grounded in science, meaning what is just and unjust. And an example of this is that, it's a fact that if you're an African American descent, genetically over a certain threshold, because obviously you don't have to be 100% African American, you can be 50% Caucasian or whatever. But if you are genetically over a certain threshold, then you have a darker complexion. Okay, and no one would disagree with that. No one would argue with that. That's rooted in scientific fact. There's, the skin pigment is different if you're of African descent. Just to be clear, I believe it's the pigment is the same itself. However, it's the quantity that gives the dark complexion. But all that example, all to say that if something is rooted in scientific fact, it's not necessary. Like, we wouldn't say that it's unjust, right? Even though technically that is discrimination, not in a bad sense, but it is discrimination because you are making a statement about a specific group of people. So you're categorizing a whole group of people based on something, and that particular case, it's factual. They have a darker complexion, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, of course. But we wouldn't say that that's unjust discrimination. Okay, it's generally accepted as being a fair statement. I mean, it's factually true. Just as I'm Caucasian descent, and I have I don't know what I have. I guess white skin or pale skin, pink skin. I don't know. We change colors throughout the year based on how much sun we get. But basically that's the point I'm trying to make. Is if it's grounded in science, we generally accept it.